I'm here to find out about one of the station's lesser-known services from writer Andrew Martin. Here you are, Andrew, beautifully positioned under the clock.
Nice to meet you.
Very good to see you. My Bradshaw's guide tells me that Waterloo had many railway offices and departments, and I think you're going to tell me about a rather unusual one, aren't you?
Yes, it was also the terminus of what was rather irreverently known as the Stiffs Express, a line that carried dead bodies to the largest cemetery in the British Empire at Brookwood in Surrey. And you could have a whole funeral service based around this railway line. The service could be conducted at this end or at the end of the cemetery, but either way, you put your relative onto the train and they had a one-way ride to Brookwood. You yourself, as a mourner, had a return ticket.
The all-inclusive service was run by the London Necropolis Company, which was set up in the 1850s. They had discreet offices and even their own funeral platform just next door to the station.
Waterloo would have been a very railway-haunted area, the constant rattle and clatter of the trains coming in and going out every minute over the viaducts, over the high level, and even in death, they were trying to fit you into a railway timetable.
So this facade, this splendid facade, is the Necropolis station, is it?
This is what survives of the whole Necropolis complex.
Why were they sending all these bodies out of London?
Well, they thought it was a good business proposition, but it was also a response to a genuine crisis, a shortage of burial space. In the first half of the 19th century, the population of London about doubled, and there were bits of skeletons lying about in churchyards. So they needed space to bury bodies. And it would be discussed since the 1840s that there ought to be a big cemetery safely far away from London so that cholera would not be an issue, and the bodies would be transported there on this newfangled invention, the train.
At its busiest, each train carried up to 48 bodies, along with the various funeral parties. At the cemetery, there were two purpose-built stations, one for Anglicans and one for other denominations. So you brought me up quite a long staircase, well, up at the level of the railway viaduct.
We're now behind the office part of the Necropolis complex, and the hearses would come sweeping in through this archway, and then the bodies would be lifted by an electrical lift up to the actual Necropolis station on the viaduct there.
What sort of carriages did they travel in?
The carriages were funeral carriages and passenger carriages. Both were divided into first, second and third class.
Sorry, I have to stop you. Are you telling me the bodies went first, second or third class?
You might think, you know, why would you send your maiden aunt first class? You could easily save a bit of money. Sending her third, she wouldn't know the difference. But I think they took more care with your coffin if you went first. And whether you bought a first, second or third class ticket for the corpse would correspond to the type of funeral that you bought. So if you bought one of the fancier funeral packages, a first class ticket would go with that.
Before long, it wasn't just the dead who were taking advantage of the third-class fares.
A lot of people would kind of sneak on to the funeral service, even if they weren't burying anyone, especially golfers, because there was a good golf course near Brookwood Cemetery.
So now I have an idea in my mind of golfers dressed in black, pretending to be mourners.
I'm assuming that golfers did not wear garish yellow checked jumpers in those days. If so, I don't think they could have masqueraded as being in mourning. And what they did with their golf clubs, I don't know.
The business ran successfully for almost a century, but today just hints of the line remain. And so, when did the last Stiff Express puff out of here?
April 1941. And then later in that month, there was a big bombing raid. And not only was most of the Necropolis complex here destroyed, but the funeral train was blown up into the bargain, and that was curtains.
Paisley Gilmore Street. This train is for Glasgow Central.
Well, I've now arrived at the very Victorian-feeling station of Paisley Gilmore Street. My Bradshaw says of Paisley, Paisley is a thriving seat of the cotton trade, with a population of about 47,952. Don't you love that combination of approximation and precision? In the 19th century, Paisley was one of Britain's most productive textile towns. It gave its name to the Indian-inspired shawls patterned with the iconic teardrop. But Victorian Paisley also produced a fabric with origins closer to home. In the mid-19th century, Paisley was a town of weavers, and the cottage industry had pretty much given way to big new mills. And with tourists pouring into Scotland on the trains, and with a royal interest in all matters Scottish, there was a tartan craze, and the mills were churning out mile after mile of the stuff, and it was being exported everywhere, beginning its journey, of course, by rail. Sad to remember, just a century before Victoria's reign, tartan was almost lost forever. The Highlanders who'd supported Bonnie Prince Charlie's rebellion had been defeated by government troops at the Battle of Culloden. The director of the Scottish Tartans Authority, Brian Wilton, knows the story. After Culloden, what happens to the Highlanders?
I think the first blow was that tartan was banned from 1747 until, in fact, 1782. That resulted in many of the old looms being lost, many of the old patterns being lost. That very proud and unique identity of the Highlanders was taken away from them. They were made to wear trousers. And trousers, as far as they were concerned, the majority of them were terrible things, impractical, not Scottish. So that was a great slap in the face for them.
The authorities tried to suppress the rebellious Highlanders by destroying their culture, but they didn't quite succeed in killing off tartan. Tartan goes from being banned in the Highlands to being a fashion accessory for the English upper classes. How on earth did that happen?
That was due to a remarkable, lucky coincidence of events. And the first one was probably George IV, who was invited to Edinburgh in 1822, a trip that was orchestrated by Sir Walter Scott. Now, when George IV arrived in Edinburgh, he was kitted out from top to toe in tartan, and even, it said, wore some pink tights, which didn't go down too well. In the invitation to the clan chiefs to come to meet the king, Walter Scott said, "Dress in your clan tartans." Many of them didn't know what their tartans were, really, because of the previous ban. And they were scrabbling around, going to the weavers. They were talking to old people in the clan, saying, "Can you remember our tartan?"
At this point, two young men appeared. The Sobieski brothers professed to be grandsons of Bonnie Prince Charlie and claimed to have discovered an ancient document that could solve the Highlanders' problem.
They also let it be known that they had a very rare manuscript which detailed, in minute detail, Scottish clan tartans, not just for the Highlanders, but also for the Lowlanders and people in the borders, families in the borders who'd never had tartans before. Walter Scott was very suspicious of this, but the rest of Scottish society welcomed these with open arms because of this romantic wave.
The brothers produced a dictionary of tartans, allowing many clans and families to lay claim to an ancestral pattern. Tartan sales began to take off. Do you think the railways helped to spread the tartan mania in the Victorian period?
We're positive that they had a very great effect. Not only did they provide a marvellously improved means of transport to get tartans from the Highlands down to the market in the south, but they also, on the return journey, brought the tourists with them who would come into the Highlands and would buy tartan. So I think it was a marvellously symbiotic relationship.
The public was so infatuated with tartan that the book's authenticity went largely unchallenged.
Very many of today's tartans turned out at the end of the day to be forgeries.
What, the book was a fraud?
Yes, gifted forgeries because they were very imaginative, but the clans accepted them, and that makes up many of today's clan tartan books.
I'd be meaning to ask you, what tartan are you wearing now?
That's the Fraser tartan. And,
your family tartan?
Yes, my grandmother was a Fraser.
And you're sure it's genuine?
Oh, it better be. She'll be in trouble if it isn't.
It seems that many supposedly ancient tartans were in fact invented in Bradshaw's day. Now anyone can design and register a new one. But for traditionalists, the idea of clan weaves has stuck. Before I leave Hastings, I'm setting out along the cliffs to a place that became hugely popular with the Victorians, Fairlight Glen. It inspired a lyrical description in my guidebook. I wish I had more time here. Bradshaw's says a week may be delightfully spent exploring the fairy-like nooks around Fairlight Glen, situated in a sweet umbrageous spot, down which by narrow winding steps hewn out of the solid rock, one only can descend at a time. I'm here to discover a Victorian craze. My guidebook displays symptoms of fern fever, an obsession with feathery green plants that gripped the Victorians for several decades. Fairlight Glen, with its secret forests and abundant ferns, captured the Victorian imagination. I'm meeting garden historian Dr. Sarah Whittingham to discover why. Sarah, hello.
Hello.
Good to see you. Why did the Victorians have such a passion for ferns?
It was the heyday of natural history. So if they weren't hunting for ferns, they were out tapping rocks with hammers, trying to find fossils, or catching butterflies, or looking into rock pools, that sort of thing. It was the first time really that you got the middle classes who had villas and houses in the centre of town, and they had a small garden that they wanted to fill with plants and flowers.
Ferns were seen as magical plants, with some believed the power to make you invisible. Books identifying almost 2,000 varieties were published to aid the fern-mad Victorians. The craze even had a name, pteridomania. The railways enabled amateur collectors to widen their hunt for specimens, and a fern by mail order business developed. Fairlight Glen really is pretty, isn't it? And I can just imagine Victorians getting on the railways and coming to, remotish spots like this, looking for their ferns.
That's right, but they didn't have to come out to these places. They could just buy their ferns from nurseries, and the nurseries would use the railways to send the plants to the customers.
So the middle classes could buy whatever they needed for their gardens.
They could buy their ferns from a professional fern tout. And they certainly used the railways. They would come out to places like this. They'd ransack the countryside. They'd send up huge amounts of ferns in hampers up to the towns. They'd follow them up, and then they'd tout them from door to door, or they'd sell them on street corners.
So this amazing craze was helped on by the railways?
Oh yes, definitely.
But all those Victorians hoping to recreate a slice of country life in their urban houses found it to be harder than they thought. So when Victorians take all their ferns back to their homes and their gardens, do they thrive in the city?
Well, no, that was the major problem. Of course, Victorian cities were very polluted places. So luckily, a doctor in the East End of London, Nathaniel Bagshaw Ward, who is a very keen fern grower, found a way of successfully growing ferns. He invented what became known as the Wardian case.
Which was, what, a little kind of conservatory?
That's right, like the terrariums that became very popular in the 1960s and 70s. And they came in all shapes and styles, all sizes, and it became the thing to have in your drawing room in the 1850s.
Fern fever took root, and feathery leaves made their appearance on wallpaper, teacups, and chamber pots. Even in architecture, they adorned columns and railings. Today, Chester Street has just one main line passing through Alex's station. In Bradshaw's day, it was at the centre of a spider's web of colliery railways bringing coal to the town for export along the River Wear. Coal mining has always been dangerous work, and 19th century miners had to trust each other with their lives. Close-knit mining communities developed their own traditions, and one, the Rapper Sword Dance, is sustained by local resident Ricky Forster and his family. Now, you're beautifully turned out for what? For rapper?
Rapper sword dance, yes.
A rapper sword dance?
Northeast tradition.
It goes back how long?
1800s. Well, I've got family in it in the 1800s, carrying the dance through to the present day.
Your family's been doing it all that time?
Yeah.
And what is it you're carrying here?
A rapper sword.
A rapper sword. Is that sharp?
No, it's blunt. Just cut like a scissor. You know. So
what was this used for?
For cleaning pit ponies' backs.
So, Will you give us a dance, please?
Well, I think we're going to manage that, you know.
During the 19th century, groups of dancers travelled all over the northeast by train, performing at competitions in pubs, clubs and miners' galas. As well as dancers, comic characters provided light relief.
You tell him what to do, yeah. You tell him what to do.
Can I tell him what to do?
Oh, you do what she says. You do it.
Alright, come on here. Alright, round here. You go now. You go now.
All right. What's that? No! No! Who's that hand? I will put it in the handbag. Everybody, lads.
Everybody.
All right.
That was absolutely fantastic. Early railway travellers were attracted by the views, no doubt, but many came determined to acquire precious souvenirs with the highest possible seal of approval. One item that Victorian tourists latched onto was jet, a black gemstone that could be carved into jewellery, which, after the death of her husband Prince Albert, became very popular with Her Majesty the Queen herself. Jeweller Chris Sellers will show me where to look for jet, a search that's continued since Bradshaw's day.
Interesting journey down here.
Down the cliff, yeah, absolutely. What is jet?
It's a fossilised monkey puzzle tree, actually, Araucaria. 180 million years ago, these were laid down, and under the pressure, obviously, have turned into the black magic.
I think of precious gemstones as coming from the heart of Africa. Are there many in Britain?
There's only two. There's obviously Blue John from Derbyshire, but jet is so highly prized, and going back to Victorian days, you know, was sort of made and used extensively in jewellery.
The only jet to be found in Britain is on the coast near Whitby. The Victorian fashion for black jewels created a huge demand for this rare stone, and jet hunters combed the shore. How did the Victorians quarry it, if that's the word?
They weren't very eco-friendly, I'm afraid. And there's some evidence at certain times you can see here where they've been drilling and they actually used explosives on these cliffs.
Where do you find it today?
The material today is largely sort of beach-combed. There's some small seams that sort of appear in the cliffs, but we've got people that's collecting it all the time out on the beach.
Can you see any jet in the cliffs nowadays?
Yeah, there's just evidence of a few sort of collectors that have been down here following some very, very thin, small seams. It's actually harder to see when it's wet. But back of that there, you can see a very, very thin seam.
It's lovely the way it glints in the bottom there.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff.
In Bradshaw's epoch, Whitby had 200 jet workshops. Only a few remain, including Chris's, established in 1860. Morning. So what do you do?
I'm making some rings at the moment.
Yeah.
Just a matter of cutting the piece of stone to size.
Just show me you've got 10 fingers. Okay. You have.
These are some antique pieces from a collection.
I'm noticing that the Victorian taste is for very big pieces.
They were very bold in what they actually did. Jet was a material that enabled this to happen because it's so light. You know, there's no weight to it at all.
No, none at all.
It was interesting that jet actually found its way to the Great Exhibition in London in 1851, where some sort of important orders were actually gained by the local manufacturers. Again, that's the kind of thing that helped put Whitby on the map. Without the railways, that really wouldn't have been possible.
Chris has one last marvel to show me.
The largest piece of Whitby Jet ever found. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's absolutely enormous, isn't it?
Looking at the edge, though, you see this. It's total gem quality all the way through. An interesting part about it is on this side you can see there's all the ammonites that actually were crushed when the branch actually sort of went down.
Covered in tiny little fossils, all the way across.
The whole length of it.